Good morning, Quad Cities. I'll tell you, you can also find us online on Facebook. It's something that we've just started getting into. I have a staff member, Angelique, who is actually working on that for us, and we've got things to offer you there. So look for us on Facebook also. You can become, one of our, what do they call it, requested. You can do a request for Facebook. Excuse me, and then you can start getting a lot of information from Facebook also. But our website is also a great source. We're going to talk a little bit about, first of all, the schedule at the clinic. We've got the Tuesday evening 6:30 weight loss seminar, and this is kind of a unique experience. It's not just something that where you come in and you hear about our program. What we talk about is the actual physiology of putting on weight. We also talk about the physiology of losing weight quickly. Now, one of the things that, excuse me, a lot of people don't realize is that losing weight quickly is actually, to some extent, a more natural way of losing weight than just doing it through exercise and just cutting back. Now, I'm not saying anything against those things because those are just very valuable for tuning things up. But when you really need to lose lots of weight, as many of you out there know, doing it in a slow fashion just doesn't work because the temptation is just too great. I mean, what do you get on television? You're either getting drug commercials, which tell you how to sustain your life after you've just destroyed it with all kinds of bad habits and bad nutrition and things, or it's all about how to destroy your life with the wrong kinds of foods. And the kinds of foods, of course, that are most tempting are just absolutely delicious and sweet and syrupy, and they look great. And I mean, you go to what do? You go to a breakfast place that doesn't just serve good, nutritious, bacon and eggs and things like that. But you go and have the pancake with the huge pancake on the oversized plate with, artificial whipped cream everywhere all over it and gorgeous, beautiful dyed red strawberries and syrup and all this stuff. And you just go crazy on this stuff. And all of us know that's not a formula for health. All of us know that's not a formula for staying or becoming healthier and getting thinner. We all know this. It's no secret. And yet what happens is we get all involved with this stuff. So when it comes to actually kind of bringing that weight down and, bringing it down slowly, it's something we have a terrible time. I mean, what you want to lose an ounce a week? Now that, by the way, losing an ounce a week would be absolutely incredible. It'd be a great thing to do. 16 ounces in a pound, you got to bring that down slowly, right? Slow weight loss is healthier. Well, good luck, because you lose, maybe you lose 5 ounces, and what do you say? You say, I think I'll have a bowl of ice cream. Why? Because it's just not inspiring. It's not the kind of thing that keeps you on track. And so it's just mostly worthless, particularly when the next commercial you see on television has this gorgeous plate of sweets. It's just too tempting. So what we recommend is that for a while you're on your weight loss journey, that you do something that's inspiring. You do something that brings you down pounds a week at a time. And it's very, very possible to do that. As a matter of fact, our ancestors went through what a ketogenic diet protocol every year, pretty much. In fact, they would kind of run out of carbs midwinter, and they would be eating fat and protein the rest of the winter. And as a result of that, they would actually go into what is called ketosis. And what that means is that you start burning your own fat as your primary source of energy. And when you start doing that, it makes a huge difference, because when you're using your own fat as your energy source, you clean things up. You take the fat off of you, you lighten yourself up, you get ready for the summer, you get ready to work in the fields and things like that again. That's at least what our ancestors did. And they were plenty healthy by the time summer rolled around, and then they had good fresh vegetables and fruit all summer long. The harvest came, they had Thanksgiving, they really kind of made themselves fatties again. Because why? Because it's important to have fat during those lean times during the winter. And then they would go into ketosis again. Now, what is ketosis? Ketosis is when you burn your body fat as your primary fuel source. We're talking about how to remain true to a weight loss program and how to get the fat off in an efficient way, because we know that most people try to do it slowly. In fact, they're advised to do it slowly, and you can do it that way. And it's really hard, and there's just, for most people, too many temptations. Well, let me just ask you this question. For those of you who do need to lose some weight out there, that need to get the fat off, how successful have you been? Is the methods that you've been using actually working? Are you getting that weight off of your knees? Are your ankles feeling better? You got 20 pounds off, maybe. Was that enough? Is that actually a good healthy goal? Are you down below 25% fat? If you're not down below 25% fat, then the American Heart Association says that you haven't really reached the safety zone for cardiovascular disease, for heart attack prevention. So are you doing that on your program? If you're not, then you might need to find out how to do that better. And what we're offering at the Welcome to Health Center is a protocol that's been used in Europe for over 30 years. In fact, it's almost 40 years now. It's the ideal protein weight loss method. That's what we feature at our clinic. Now, we give advice on other methods too, don't get me wrong. There are other legitimate methods, but what we find is the healthiest, the most efficient, and as we mentioned before, the most inspiring, because you're actually not only feeling the effects of getting that weight off of your knees, getting that weight off of your low back, etc., but you're also you're actually seeing the effect in the mirror. You're actually seeing yourself thin down. The face gets a little thinner. Your belly doesn't stick out so much. We get people who are just like proud to the max, proud as punch, but not a weight enhancing punch, but a punch that thins you down. They're as pleased as punch that they can tie their shoes. It's just amazing. But and you out there that have difficulty with things like that, you know who you are. I mean, well, gosh, yeah, I haven't been able to do that for years. And what we find is that people that come into the Ideal Protein Weight Loss Center, the Welcome to Health Weight Loss Center, is just something that they find joy in that. And it's just a symbol. It's more of a symbol. It actually represents all the other things they can do. And that is the big thing. People, I went hunting with my buddies for the first time in 5 years, we hear. Why? Because I can was the answer. Because I can. And I said, did you get a hunting license and all that stuff? No, I didn't bother. Well, why didn't you get a hunting license? Because I don't really need a hunting license. I wasn't out there to hunt. I was just out there to be with my buddies. Well, why didn't you do that before? Because I couldn't. You follow what I'm saying? I mean, there are hundreds of things that on people's bucket lists out there, probably thousands, maybe even millions of things on people's bucket lists that they always intended to do, but because of their weight loss, they cannot do it. One of our wonderfully successful dieters, one of our largest dieters, as a matter of fact, came in at 420 pounds, lost 120 pounds in about 7 months, and could get back in his race car again. Just loves racing at the Rock Island County racetrack, the county fair racetrack, loves that dirt racing. And he hadn't been able to get into his own car for over 5 years. Somebody else had to drive it. And that's one of his passions. It's his passion, but he couldn't get in. He lost 120 pounds. He raced that summer, came back the next year, lost another 35 pounds, raced that summer. This summer, I haven't had a chance to talk to him yet, but I bet he's out there racing. Why? Because he can now. I mean, tying your shoes, getting in your race car, going hunting. What is your bucket list include that you can or can't do? What do you have? You got grandkids? Can you get down on the floor and play with your grandkids? What does it do to you? Can you get back up? What does it do to your knees? You know, a lot of times what happens, there's a combination of things that happens when a person carries too much weight. Not only do they have just the physical gravity pulling them down and just, oh my gosh, weighing on every step, even sitting down, you just way down in the chair, etc. You got all of that, but you also have the added inflammation. And how does having extra weight yield inflammation? Well, it turns out that the inflammatory process in the person's body is governed to a large extent by how much blood there is available to all of the different cells in the body. And after we get back from this word from one of our sponsors, I'm going to talk about this specifically because blood pressure and available oxygen to cells makes a difference in terms of the pain you experience on a day-to-day basis. Gravity. Oh my gosh, what effect does that have on us? Well, it keeps us from floating away. That's one of the effects, of course, which is, well appreciated. But what other effects does it have? Well, gravity bears down on our joints. And frankly, our joints can only be healthy if we put them through stresses. This is one of the things that people have kind of lost track of, in our snowflake culture. I can't stand to hear another opinion that disagrees with mine, etc. Why? And these are university students. I mean, this is ridiculous. They should be exposed to all kinds of differing opinions, but they're just too fragile. Well, the body is kind of that way too. If you put the body in space where there is no gravity, one of the things that happens is the bones start going away. Why? Because if there's no gravity, you don't need bones to hold you up. And astronauts, one of the biggest problems is astronauts become osteoporotic. They also become extremely weak if they don't have gravity. Their muscles start to go away. Why? Because floating around in a gravity-free environment, you don't need muscles, or you don't need that many muscles. As a consequence, they have to work really hard just to keep their bone mass and their muscle mass up, and it's difficult. On the other hand, when we're in the gravity environment, if the gravity is too great, it can actually break down our structure and break down our joints. Normally being involved in athletics helps your cartilage stay healthy because of the movement and the bone, et cetera, the muscle strength, all that stuff is there. But if you add way more weight than you can structurally handle, then you can actually break down cartilage. Why? Just take your knees, for example. You're pressing down on those knees so hard that it just presses out all of the oxygen and all of the nutrition from the joint. Normally, you would take the pressure off and all that would come back into the joint, and just the movement in the joint actually helps the joint stay healthy. On the other hand, if it's too great, you can actually break cartilage and fragment it. It actually becomes like grains of sand in the joint in many cases. And some people actually do that to their own joints. So how important is it to take the weight off those joints and allow them to move freely again? Well, it's very, very important. And that's why we talked earlier about a person who could go hunting for the first time in years because he lost about 100 pounds and the joints in his knees and his ankles were no longer just being abused every time he got out of a chair. He went hunting and loved it. Okay, now what about other things, other factors? Well, there are other factors too that affect pain all the way through the body. Fibromyalgia pain and all these different kinds of pains. And how are these things influenced by having extra fat weight? Well, this is the way it goes. Every time you gain a pound of fat, you have to actually add 7 miles of blood vessels to your body in order to accommodate the nutrition and the oxygen that fat needs. But if you add an extra 100 pounds of fat, which many of you out there have done, what happens is you actually add 700 miles of extra blood vessels in order to accommodate the nutritional needs and the oxygen needs of those fat cells. Well, in order to get all that blood through the system, what do you have to do? Well, surely to pump that much more blood, you're probably going to add 2 or 3 more hearts, right? That would make sense. I mean, if you build a huge house, you have to add extra furnaces in the house in order to bring heat to every place in the house, right? Some of you know that. Well, why not add a couple extra hearts? And yet, of course, it's ridiculous. You don't add extra hearts just because you added 700 miles of blood vessels to pump blood through. You've only got 1 heart. So what does that 1 heart have to do? Well, it has to pump more blood faster and pump it with more pressure in order to get it through that incredibly expanded set of tubes. It has to pump with more pressure. But there's danger in having high blood pressure, right? So what are you going to do? Well, when the blood pressure goes up too high, your doctor recommends that you bring it down. So now you've brought the blood pressure down. do you have enough blood pressure now to pump blood to all of the extra fat cells that you've added? That 100 pounds of extra fat cells requiring 700 of miles extra blood vessels. Do you have enough power in a lower blood pressure situation to pump blood to all those? And the answer is no. So what happens? Well, what happens is obvious. They don't get enough blood. Now, if the cells don't get enough blood, what happens to cells that are deprived of oxygen and deprived of nutrition? Well, obviously, they get sick. If they get sick, what are they going to do? Well, they do what all sick cells do. They start screaming for help. They say, help me, I'm not doing well here. I'm suffocating from carbon dioxide and I'm gasping for oxygen. I'm not getting enough nutrition and my waste products, my sewage is backing up in my cell. I've got to have more circulation. And with that happening, what happens is your inflammation goes up because your immune system will respond. It will say, oh my gosh, I'm getting these signals that I need to send immune cells out there to help. And it will send immune cells out and your generalized inflammation throughout your entire body will go up. And as that inflammation goes up, what happens? You start aching everywhere. Because as inflammation goes up, you start having what is called in the literature sickness behavior. Look it up. And you'll see the mechanisms there. Sickness behavior. Sickness behavior is the scientific term to say that you have an immune system that's out of control and you're going to be starting to act just like you have the flu. And what happens when you have the flu? I feel just awful. I'm just not motivated to do anything. I can barely stay awake. I just sit there in front of the television. I'm not doing anything. I'm not doing the things I love to do. I just feel awful. I ache everywhere. My joints ache. And now you're involved in what many people with obesity have, and that is that they just aren't getting, again, their bucket list is just out the window. They don't have a prayer of doing the things that bring them the most joy. They can't even help their family much. They can't even get on the floor and play with their grandchildren for fear of not being able to get up. And even if they can get up, they ache so much when they're down there and they ache so much trying to get up, they just sit on the couch. And that's where they've been for a long time. So what do you do about it? That's the question. What are you going to do about it? What are you going to do to get your life back? It's up to you. I mean, it has nothing to do with me unless you ask me to help you. Then it has a lot to do with me. And that's what we do there at the Welcome to Health Center. We help people get their health goals straight and get themselves back on track. But if you're just sitting there on the couch and you don't give us a call and you don't come in for the Tuesday evening seminar, I can't do anything for you. I mean, just talking about it here is fine, maybe you can be inspired now, but be inspired enough to give that practice a call, 309-764-2115. Give it a call. Make that your first step. Because if you don't do something, you won't be getting anywhere. You'll stay there on the couch. You'll stay there in front of the television. You'll continue watching those commercials about just incredibly colorful food, with water droplets falling on the strawberries and all that stuff. There's nothing wrong with strawberries, except now on the commercial, they're coated with sweet syrup and they're on just incredible. You'll keep watching those things and you'll be highly motivated to get up and eat something sweet out of the refrigerator, but you better watch the next commercial because that's your next step. The next step, if you haven't already made it, is taking those medications, those drugs that actually will kind of keep you alive, although miserable, and you'll have all kinds of side effects at the same time. You'll be on blood pressure medication, antidepressants, you're going to be on, heart medication, you're going to be on things for atrial fibrillation, you're going to be on this, that, and the other thing. You're definitely going to be on statins, which in most cases will add to your muscle pains and aches and all this stuff because that's one of their major side effects. You may even die of rhabdomyolysis, which is, where your kidney just fills up and can't filter out the proteins you're throwing off because you've killed off your mitochondria. You've killed off your energy centers and you wonder why you're dragging, right? So you better watch that next commercial because that's where you're headed. And So what else could you do? You could give us a call at the Welcome to Health Center. You could say, I don't want that future. I don't want those commercials to be the things that I am looking for next. I want to be able to get out and do the things that make my life meaningful. I want to get out there and be able to help my family. I want to get out there. I want to build things. I want to go out and be able to walk with my friends through the fields. I want to be able to tie my own shoes. I want to, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Those are the things that make your life meaningful. We are tickled pink to help you with those goals at the Welcome to Health Center. Give us a call. The number's coming up. See you next week. Bye-bye.